Hey, future respiratory therapist, respiratory coach here with you. I got another request for you. It's Friday, the Friday before Thanksgiving week. So many of you are probably out for Thanksgiving break. Some of you, if you have to go to school next Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then I know you're almost there and you'll get a little break. The rest of you who are out today and you have all next week off, then I just want to encourage you to spend time with your family. Encourage you to spend time with your kids, your parents, your brothers, your sisters, your friends, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, whatever it is, your wife, your husband, whatever. Spend time with them and love on them, because we all know that throughout the course of respiratory school, due to the demand of it, we have a tendency to neglect the ones that are closest to us, and breaks are designed to replenish and refresh that connection. So as we head into Thanksgiving break, spend time with your loved ones. Don't spend the entire week. If you have a week off next week, do not spend the entire week studying your ass off. I'll just be real honest with you, okay? As a respiratory teacher, I don't ever tell my students to go on break and study every single day for 6 hours. Like, I don't think that's what breaks are about. I think breaks are to give us a break to allow us to come back rejuvenated and ready to dive back in and finish strong. So that's what I want to say as we get ready to go into Thanksgiving break. Appreciate you guys for watching. I appreciate all the support and all the just interaction that we've had over the last year. It's been really fun, and I've had a blast doing it, and I hope I've helped some of you along the way. Now, the question today comes from Gemma Millen, who put a comment up several weeks ago that stated that I guess there was an Italian, the only reason I say that is because they stated it. There's an Italian physician who told them that during spontaneous ventilation, plateau pressure can actually be higher than peak pressure. Now, if you've watched any of my videos, especially over dynamic compliance and static compliance and any of my mechanical ventilation videos, excuse me, you know that I've routinely said that plateau cannot be higher than peak. It's just simply not possible during positive pressure ventilation. And so I want to clarify this, and the question was not a you're wrong, it was more of a what's my opinion on this. And my opinion is simply this. And what's funny about this, Jim, is myself is Italian, and so you're going to get opinions from two Italians. So take that for what you want to, right? But here you go. To answer the question, in the spontaneous breathing patient, yes, the plateau pressure can be greater than the peak inspiratory pressure. Now, let's give you an example for this, okay? When you say spontaneous breathing patient, I think of myself right now. I'm a spontaneous breathing person. So when I breathe in, that entire breath is a negative pressure breath. At the point in time which I perform a breath hold, so I go in and then hold, then of course the pressure now is greater than what it was during the negative force of creating the inspiratory breath. So yes, in a true spontaneous breathing patient, your plateaus are higher than your peak inspiratory pressures. But who's monitoring peak inspiratory pressures or plateau pressures on a spontaneous breathing patient? Now, I'm assuming you're talking about a spontaneous breathing patient that's on a mechanical ventilator. So my question on that goes to this. If they're on CPAP, let's do it like this. If they're on CPAP, you have this constant pressure that is held throughout all of inspiration and all of exhalation. If they inhale, during inspiration, this will become negative. As the diaphragm rises up, it'll come more back positive. And when you do an inspiratory hold, of course, you'll see this, and that plateau pressure will be greater than, I guess, peak inspiratory pressure. Now, again, much like a true spontaneous breathing person that's not on a vent, why are we monitoring this? It doesn't matter, right? Like it just simply doesn't matter. We're not concerned about this. One, because patients aren't holding their breaths. Two, if you're in CPAP and you're talking about this, you're not assessing plateau pressures because you can't perform an inspiratory hold on a pure spontaneous breathing person, even if they're intubated on CPAP. So you say, okay, well, what if they're on pressure support? Okay, well, on pressure support, we see something more like this. You have your PEEP set here. And then your pressure support is set at, let's say, 10. The patient inhales. When they inhale, this signifies the inspiratory effort. The vent says, I'm going to raise your pressure support up to assist your inspiratory efforts. And it holds until you see a flow decay. Now, when the flow decay reaches a certain point, depending on whatever the vent is set on, then exhalation happens. And this hold on this pressure support setting falls back to baseline. Now, if the person wants to do an inspiratory hold, I assume this would stay right here. I don't know because, one, you can't do an inspiratory hold on a spontaneous breath. And two, I've never asked the patient to do an inspiratory hold on a spontaneous breath. So again, plateau pressure in a spontaneous breathing patient, if they're in true spontaneous mode, we're not so much concerned with plateau pressures. When do we become concerned with plateau pressures? Well, the answer to that is when we're providing mechanical support for a patient who is unable to sustain their own ventilatory and oxygenation needs, and we're providing full mechanical support. So now we're talking more of a volume control breath, or maybe even a pressure control breath. I'm going to keep this just to a volume control breath because that's typically where we're assessing plateau pressures. Because if you're in pressure control, such as the following, and you do an inspiratory hold, pressure control looks like this. I need to get a new marker. Let me grab another marker here, guys. Real quick. Hold on, give me 2 seconds. Okay. So, sorry about that, Gemma. So you got pressure control, you have your pressure waveform, you're starting at a PEEP, you're rising, you're holding, and then you're coming back down. Now if you do an inspiratory hold in pressure control, you're going to tell the vent, after you perform your inspiratory phase, hold it at what I've told you to hold. Well, in pressure control, you're holding at your set PIP. So this is just going to stay here. Okay? The vent's going to just allow it's just going to hold at that pressure. Now, if you're in volume control, we have PEEP setting here. We give a breath, we see our pressure waveform rise, we do an inspiratory hold, and then we fall back to baseline. Now, what I feel like may be the topic of conversation here is that how does this get higher than this? This is plateau, this is peak. How do we get plateau higher than peak? And according to the physician you spoke to, they said if the patient is spontaneously breathing. Now, what they're saying is the patient is actively breathing with the vent. So if you do an inspiratory hold and you see something like this, then this is going to be recorded as your plateau. But the active movement of the diaphragm, now you're controlling this hold. With your button on the ventilator, the inspiratory hold on the ventilator, you're controlling this hold. And so yes, if you hold the breath on a patient who is actively breathing with the vent, then you will see this tidal volume go in and then settle. And then as the patient's diaphragm comes back up against the lungs, the pressure will sharply rise and will stay there until they initiate another breath. They will attempt to initiate another breath, and then you'll see it vary. So I think that may be what you're talking about, or what the physician was talking about. If you're talking true spontaneous respirations, such as me and you breathing right now, then 100% of plateau pressure, which is an inspiratory hold after the volume has gone in the alveoli and is full, and you hold it, then of course, because all of inspiration is negative, and then when you close the glottis and hold it, then yes, pressure goes up and it's positive. But in mechanical ventilation, when you're talking about full mechanical ventilation, anytime you give a volume control breath and you see this mechanism right here, you need to understand that this is happening against the patient who is actively breathing, which I'm assuming possibly is what your physician meant when he referred to as spontaneously breathing. Yes, the plateau pressure will be higher than the peak, but let's be certain to understand this. This is not a true reflection of plateau pressure. This is a reflection of diaphragmatic movement against a machine that is told to hold the breath in the patient's lungs. And the diaphragm moving up against that, trying to exhale, is what causes this pressure to go back up. So that's why you see a plateau pressure greater than a peak inspiratory pressure. If you ever get this, don't chart it, because it's not accurately reflective of your patient's true alveolar plateau pressure, which is going to give you a true reflection of alveolar compliance. This is a result of intrathoracic pressures changing because of an actively moving diaphragm. And I wouldn't chart that, because that's not truly the reflection of what is happening at the alveolar level. If you think about peak inspiratory pressure and static and plateau pressure, and you think about it in terms of dynamic compliance and static compliance, then it only makes sense that peak inspiratory pressure is air moving through the airways and extending the alveoli. And plateau pressure is just the distension or the pressure within alveoli when that breath is held. When you take the air, the moving flow out of the equation, the pressure has to slightly fall, or maybe dramatically fall if you have a high airway resistance problem. I have another video over this where I break down dynamic and static compliance, the one you probably referenced to and put your question on. And so it talks about airway resistance. Peak pressure in standard volume control ventilation has to be higher than plateau. And if it's not, then you have an actively breathing patient and you're unable to get an active reflection of plateau. That's, in my opinion, a more true statement than saying a spontaneous breathing patient in volume control can have a plateau greater than peak. That's my thoughts on it. Okay, Jim, I hope this helps. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. I hope it makes sense. I'm not telling you that the other person is wrong. I'm just telling you my opinion is, from what I've seen, is that this is what's happening. If you take your time, you can actually get a true plateau pressure. Typically, you can get it like this. You just go back and look at it and go, okay, here's my true plateau pressure before the diaphragm actively moved up. Okay, so just work with it. Just play with it. When you have those patients that are actively breathing with the ventilator in volume control, it's very, very difficult to get a true representation of plateau pressure, because the moving diaphragm creates variances in the pressure circuit. Okay, in the pressure of the closed circuit, being from the alveoli level all the way back to the vent. So, hope this helps. Let me know what you think. Have a great day.